Did we get to verse 9? Daniel 7. So we're in Daniel 7. Yeah, you're not going to see anything up there, by the way. Let me put a picture up there so you feel like you can look at the board.
What chapter?
So Daniel 7, I know we read 1 through 8 because I told you this is actually a series of visions.
No, we didn't.
So we stopped.
We stopped at 8.
Okay. Okay, so quick review. Quick review. Actually, I have this chart which kind of reviewed. Let's see. Come on, hurry up. Go faster. It's not working. So I have this little chart. It's not here. Great. I have this chart over here. So comparison of past. Okay, this was it. So when we looked in Daniel 2, we drew this picture, and we're not going to go through all of it again, but basically what was prophesied was these 4 empires, Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Hellenistic, and then this 4th empire, which again and again you should be seeing this phrase, it's different from the others. It's like them, but it's different. One of the things is, I don't think it was an animal, was one of the things that we saw. But anyway, in Daniel 2, there was this united stage, there was a 2-division stage, and then a 10-division stage, and then the Messianic kingdom. In Daniel 7, we've already kind of gone through here, and we get a little bit more detail. And so you have to put the two together to figure out how it all fits. Well, we find out the Greek Empire, Alexander the Great, the leper that's zoomed across, whereas Medo-Persian was the big, bulky bear, which is 2 empires together, very slow, just did things by numbers, and that really was the Medo-Persian. It just kind of rolled over everything. The Babylonian Empire, it's a little more classic. By the way, in the Babylon Empire, the emperor had what characteristic, or the ruler? He could make rules, and he didn't have to obey his own rules. In the Medo-Persian Empire, he can make rules, but he has to obey his rules. And they're also dynastic in terms of it passed on. In the Hellenistic Empire, that changes. Okay, so it doesn't pass on. I'm not exactly sure in the Greek world how they selected who was the leader.
It was really kind of warrior selection.
Yeah, but it was more, not popular vote, but there was a selection of a person, and then rules were binding on you. When we get to the 4th empire, the Roman Empire, that's of course a, quote, republic. I hate that term because probably the better term is mob rule, which is the problem you get essentially in Rome. Whoever controlled the mob could control the empire. Just that city. And which is why our founding fathers, tried to get away from that concept of mob rule, because he didn't want emperors going out there and throwing bread and free entertainment and, I really like this guy. He's going to be our emperor. And so...
Interesting happening today.
Yeah, and that's why originally it was only landowners who were supposed to vote, was the idea that you wouldn't let people who just had a self-serving interest and not any essentially investment in the organization. Because what they would be more interested in is, how can I get free bread? Or how can I get free entertainment? Or free cell phones. No, just kidding. So we also see this one world government stage, the 10-division stage, the Antichrist stage, and then the Messianic kingdom. Now, when you pull these together, we are in the 2-division stage. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, what that means as we look at this passage. So that's where we're at. Let's look at the next passage, which brings in a few more of these concepts. And I also want to talk about exactly how that two-division stage has been working out. And I also want to repeat why this empire is different. By the way, what did I say last time? Just, I'm trying not to, sorry.
What do you mean, the east-west?
Well, that's going to be the two-division stage, but it's not just Rome. This fourth empire is imperialism. You remember how I described imperialism? It's this type of empire that gains control, sometimes by war, but sometimes just by installing puppets or by such strong influence that they act in the manner that you want them. That's imperialism, where you control people, but you don't necessarily have to have a soldier in their country. Okay? There's economic controls, there's all kinds of different ways of controlling. Now what makes it different from the other three, because the other three, how did they control? Armies. Armies.
In some cases, weren't some of them more like cultural centers and they controlled through their culture?
Yeah, but the Greek Empire, my wife keeps wants me to move.
A lot today.
There.
When they're watching this.
Okay. The Greek Empire ended up influencing the culture for much of the West, but the reality is it was boots on the ground. And it was very fast boots, unbelievable. It was a larger area than the other ones got. We looked at the actual maps of these things. So you see the Babylonian Empire barely reaching into Iran and Turkey and part of Greece, and then all suddenly, by the time we get to the Medo-Persian, we're heading, pretty darn close toward India. We've got all of Turkey now, slightly into Greece, and a little bit larger area of Egypt. By the time we get to the Greek Empire, we're in India, we're a little bit farther down in Egypt, and we've crossed over and gone farther toward Macedonia. So that really increased. Now, the Roman Empire shifted things. So it kind of let go of the stuff to the east, and basically, Europe becomes the focus of it. All right, so we know all that. Let's go to Daniel 7, verses 9 through 14. And I'm not going to rush through this because, like last week, we will go and we will stop. So we can take our time, even though it hurts my sensibility to stop in the middle of a section, but we will do that. Okay, Daniel 7, 9 through 14. And we'll start up front. That's your reward for sitting up front. Now they're going to move to the back next week. Okay. All right. Okay, Daniel 7, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14. And that's where we stop for right now. So this section is going to contain, as we read it, the third vision, which is verses 9 through 12, and the fourth vision, verses 13 to 14. Last week we did the first two visions, okay? So there's four visions here. Go ahead.
As I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened.
Then I continued to watch because of the boastful words the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and thrown into the blazing fire. The other beasts had been stripped of their authority, but were allowed to live for a period of time.
I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is the everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed.
What I really like about Scripture is how it ties all together. And remember, I told you, Revelation ties like almost every book, all but 3 or 4 of the entire Bible. You know, it repeats in some way in it, so it becomes a really nice capstone. All right, so these are the third and fourth vision. The third vision takes place where? Yeah, it's in heaven. And what's the, you're exactly right, it's in heaven, and the setting is it's a throne room or a courtroom, but the throne room, and who is there in the court, sitting, leading? The Ancient of Days. God the Father, the Ancient of Days, sits in this courtroom, and what is he doing?
Judging.
He's delivering judgment. And the angels are standing ready to execute the judgment. Now, who is being judged?
Unbelievers.
Unbelievers, that's right. And more specifically, the fourth beast. Okay, the fourth Gentile empire is being judged right here, which would be the empire that's in charge during the period of the tribulation, okay? And also, who else is being judged specifically? The little horn. And what characterizes the little horn? The little horn, I love that phrase.
Well, it sounds like he's standing before the throne and he's still boasting.
Yeah.
Still weird.
Yes. The little horn is characterized by big words, by blasphemy. Now, so this is where it gets a little confused, and I'll tell you that I get confused. So just, to me, the little horn is the Antichrist, but the Antichrist, as we'll see later on, is slain, is killed, but he comes back to life. Okay. Again, Satan is reproducing everything he sees in Christianity to create a counterfeit. So you're going to see Satan as God the Father. You're going to see his son, which is kind of like the Antichrist, and then you're going to see the prophet, which is the Holy Spirit, speaking essentially, telling. And so he has this trifold creation of his. Now, so where I get a little confused is when the Antichrist comes back to life, is it that human person that Satan indwelt and controlled, or is it the body of that human person with Satan? Because I don't think Satan can give life. But Satan, remember, we talked about Satan being just incredibly smart. I mean, you think about you live 10,000 years, I mean, you'd have cancer cured, If you had that much time, you would be able to do so many things. So one thing I've speculated is that that's somehow the body is being kept alive without machines, but it's being kept alive. The cells are somehow, they're not stinking. There's some way he's kept it alive, but he completely controls it. That's my thinking, that the person who actually is the Antichrist is dead, and now it's Satan who essentially resurrects a body. That's my thinking. I'm not sure, so don't write any of that down. But that's kind of the thought that goes through my mind. I don't know if anyone else has had any thoughts.
Well, obviously, if it's a human person who is created by the Lord, he has a soul, and Satan can't stop that soul from...
Yeah, there's a limit to what Satan can do. And if he's really, really slain, which is what Scripture says, not just appeared, he can't bring him back. So we'll talk about that when we actually get to the section, because there's a lot of options. But this is the option I take, is that somehow he's like we can do today. We can keep a body alive. We just need a lot of machinery all around him. But somehow, I mean, this is a true zombie. What's that?
Frozen.
Yeah, you know, and that'd be interesting. You probably would never want anyone to touch him because, you know.
Since some demons are spiritual beings like angels, could they possess the body? And that can
We can certainly possess the body. I just don't know how the human flesh doesn't decay, how he would stop that. But the guy has been killed. He creates this miracle of bringing him back to life, just like God the Father brought Jesus back to life to prove his deity. Satan is doing the same thing with the Antichrist. That's why it's called Antichrist. And he can't do it, right? It's to fool people.
Well, and remember the priest during, when Moses was in Egypt, and the priests were doing all sorts of supposed miracles and so forth.
Yes.
So demons used by Satan can do...
They do have powers, and I just don't know what those powers are. You know, I told you last week, the tree of life we're not allowed to eat of anymore since we left the garden. It comes back in the New Jerusalem. And when you read the passage, it says, and the nations come to be healed of it. And you wonder, does this tree of life, when you eat the fruit or the leaves, does it do something to the cells that basically repairs the telomeres and, you know, just restores them? And it just, you know, that's what allows you to live forever. I mean, it's flesh, but it's, you know, constantly being repaired flesh. Is that what the tree of life does? Because when we were pulled away from it, the result is we died. Although it took a while initially. People lived quite a long, you know, I don't know why. You know, maybe there was some effect still from the tree of life in the corresponding descendants, but slowly, as you watch it, it got down to where we are today, you know, under 120 for the most part. All right, sorry for taking so long on that. So that's the fourth beast. The other three beasts are kind of held for a period of time, and we should see this in the next passage. So, and then the fourth vision, which starts in verse 13 and 14. Yeah, no, is in fourth vision. What is the fourth vision about? Yeah, it's the second coming of Jesus Christ. It's the establishment of the fifth kingdom, the millennial kingdom, which will come after the fourth kingdom. Okay, so that will come after the tribulation. So now let's get go ahead.
Just curious, and if you're going to talk about this later, then you can just, but some people don't believe, some churches, some denominations don't believe in the millennial kingdom. How
Right.
do they ignore that?
So there's three views of the millennial kingdom. There's premillennial view, which actually it concerns. So let's see. So there's pre-tribulation. Now let's see. There's amillennium. Premill. Yeah, premill, and I can't remember what the post is. So premill is that it's when Jesus is returned. Jesus returns before the millennial kingdom starts. That's what premill is. Amil is that we usher in the millennial kingdom by living such wonderful lives and fixing, ending war, and medicine getting better, and sanity. By the way, in the 1900s, they started thinking, hey, early, before World War I.
So we take credit for our own.
Yes.
Bringing in the millennial kingdom.
Yes, and it's not a literal 1,000 years, it's just, and there are people who believe that today, that we are making life better, and so that's what it was referring to. And then,
That's messed up.
and I cannot remember the definition of post-millennial because I can't. I should know that. I have it in my notes somewhere, but I just can't remember
You can
post.
look it up and bring it to us.
Yeah. And in fact, something I don't even like about the way the phrase sounds, but there's three.
Classical, though, that post-millennial is after the tribulation. tribulation. Jesus comes back and he reigns for 1,000 years.
No, so pre is when Jesus comes. So Jesus comes before the 1,000 years. So so tribulation, so there's pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib. There's 3 views on trib. That's where the rapture, where it's located. The millennial is where is Jesus' return located. Oh, I do remember. No, that's the rapture. So like post-trib is Jesus comes down, raptures us, and then immediately comes down and, starts his millennial kingdom, which I always said, why come twice?
Because you're using post-trib.
Yeah, yes. And so I'm trying to show people why there's different. So there's pre, mid, and post on tribulation.
But maybe there's only 2 on millennial kingdom.
No, I think there's 3. And this has to do with the rapture. Where does the rapture occur? Is the rapture before, in the middle,
Or at the end of tribulation.
or at the end of trib? Now, on the other side, for millennial, 2 ends? I don't think so. We have premillel, amillel, and the post one is the one I don't remember. Some of it sounds like they have. So it's when Jesus returns in respect to the millennial. So
this thing says on the Blue Letter Bible, it says post-millennialist believes that the millennium is an era during which Christ will reign because we have essentially convinced him to come back because we're good enough.
okay, and amillennial actually gets rid of the whole idea of 1,000 years. We also kind of, and in that one, I don't think Jesus just kind of reigns. I'm pretty sure. It's not a definitive thing. You can look it up and tell me if I'm wrong. Pre is what we believe is Jesus returns, not in respect to tribulation. When does the millennial? Jesus' return, which supposed to start in respect to the.
Why don't you just look it up and work on it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at post-millennial, and it's in Wikipedia. It says that it's post-millennial is that Christ's second coming occurs after the millennium, a golden age in which Christian ethics prosper.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's what this is basically.
it's with respect to.
So it's in respect to when Christ returns, and you were right.
Yeah, with respect to the millennial. Yeah, I thought I was right, but it's a problem when you don't review these things.
Sorry, this is like basically it's now.
Yeah. Well, we're ushering it in. Life is just getting better. By the way, after the World War II, after both World Wars, the opposition pretty much fell away, because we realized we're just learning how to kill more people. Yeah.
It's interesting because I used to think the second coming was when Jesus raptured us, but really the second coming is when Jesus comes down to finish everything and start the millennial kingdom, because we're already raptured if we believe in it.
Yeah, and what confuses people with respect to that thing, and I'm glad you bring that up. So here's the earth, here we are sitting on the earth, And so Jesus comes, but we move up, and so we meet him in the air. So
He never comes on the way.
he doesn't actually, you like my person? He's going to go up. But, and so he takes us up. Yeah, it's pretty big. But then the second coming is actually where he comes down, leading his train of people, all these believers, and we come with him, and he actually comes to the earth and defeats the Antichrist. What?
We come back and reign.
We come back and we reign with him, and then that starts the 1,000-year reign of Christ. So that's the second, which is the millennium. That's the second coming. And by the way, this could also be a timeline. So this isn't the beginning of the tribulation, but it's close to, because it occurs before the beginning of the tribulation, and this actually ends the tribulation.
Well, and when
The 7 years.
when he raptures everyone, then at that point, it's the bridegrooms.
Yes, and so there's a lot of marriage stuff in here, because essentially the husband goes and fetches the wife. He doesn't know when he can. He has to wait for the father's permission that the house is ready. He goes and fetch. They spend 7 days, a week, at the father's house, okay? Then they return to the mother and the bride's house, and they have the banquet at the bride's home. Our home was on earth. So we come down with him to earth. That's when we have the wedding banquet. That will be at the very beginning of the millennial kingdom. And the invitees are 2 groups, because we're the bride, okay? So the church is the bride, but there's 2 other groups that are invited. The Old Testament saints who believed, and the tribulation saints. Those are the guests at the wedding banquet. And then we start the tribulation period.
Yeah.
I mean the millennial period. Sorry. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Well, it doesn't really matter. We just spend longer than we expected of these. All right. As long as you get application, though. So we need to be thinking application. All right. Daniel 7. Verses 15 through 28. So let's talk about the interpretation of this. So we'll give you a whole paragraph. Do you want to read? Yeah. 15 to, wow, you get a whole bunch. 15 to 18. And go ahead, 19 through 21. 23 through 25. And Sarah, 26 and 27. Did I not say you 22 also? Whoever had 21 gets 22. So that should be the whole paragraph.
I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of all this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The 4 great beasts are 4 kings that will rise from the earth. But the holy people of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever, yes, forever and ever.
Then I wished to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron, its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet, and the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely, that horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints, and prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High. And the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom.
He gave me this explanation. The 4th beast is a 4th kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom, and after them another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his saints and try to change the set times and the laws. The saints will be handed over to him for a time, times and half a time.
But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him.
So the beasts come from the earth, which means, which is pretty easy to translate or interpret that. Well, they're human in origin is the idea. Yeah, they're not a divine thing. They're divine kingdoms of human. Daniel is primarily interested here in the fourth beast. Probably because,
It wasn't a real animal that he could recognize.
yeah, it was different from all the others. Now, all the others are, as we talked, are very clear. The fourth beast is not just the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire starts the fourth beast. But the fourth beast is the Roman Empire plus what we're going to see happens continuing on, because they essentially start this idea of imperialism. So the word different is this constant theme that occurs with the four empires. So there's, we have a little bit more that's added to the original vision. I don't know what you noticed in this. What did he talked about the little horn. What were some of the things that was brought up about him?
Physical aspect, like teeth of iron and nails of bronze.
Okay, so that's the fourth beast, yes. So obviously it's strong, it's uncaring, it just crushes people. Okay, so now the little horn appears to be greater than others around him. He's different.
But it does have physical attributes of a human.
He does.
It has human.
He's a man.
And it spoke boastfully in its eyes.
Yes, so, the haughty eyes. So, yep.
It was waging war against holy people and defeating them.
So when the Antichrist comes, and it's mainly going to be in the last 3.5 years. It'll start in the first 3.5. But in the last 3.5, he's going to get carte blanche to go after God's people. And when we get to that section in Revelation, you'll be surprised, because essentially God says, hang on, you're going to die. I mean, you're going to die. Because that's what's going to happen to most believers.
But these are the people who aren't taken up in the rapture.
Yes. So these are people who come to Christ during the 7-year period.
Okay.
Initially, there's going to be at least 144,000 Jewish believers. Probably, as you know, the Messianic Jewish movement is huge right now, bigger than it's ever been. Actually, another interesting thing, I think we'll talk about it next week, is that I think for the first time in history we have more Jews in Israel than in any other place in the world, which is also different, and it's also a key thing that we have to look at and talk about. But so they will start actually a worldwide revival during those first 3.5 years. And what's going to happen, and you see it already now, people blame, I see it in the United States, people blame Christianity for our wars, for our struggles, for our inhibitions, for the fact that we can't, love all people. They just make up things for, they're the problem of guns, it's very rampant. And there's a lot of the viral atheists who actually they're preaching exactly what communism said to do. If we want to create the society, we've got to get rid of a certain segment of society because it's holding us back. So I think what will happen during that tribulation period, even though all the Christians will be gone, then there's this revival that's messing everything up, is ultimately he's going to get an okay to go after them. We've got to get rid of this element because they're destroying our culture. They're holding us back.
Are you talking about, when you say get rid of this element, are you talking about eugenics, like Hitler killed all the Jews?
Yes.
That actually started in America, and they took it from us. That started in America with the disabled and the infirm. Mm-hmm. That started here in the Northeast, and they got their ideas from us.
Well, and of course, Nietzsche didn't help things, where this super race, and so the Germans did it. Communism, of course, felt that religion was, kind of an opiate, or, which you can also take in a positive sense, but, more people died under communism than any, and that was essentially an atheistic rule. So the saints are going to have a hard time. That's what it's talking about. The little horn's war, I love the term, little horn, is going to succeed. It's going to succeed until the Ancient of Days judgment stops the little horn and gives to the saints the kingdom. Tribulation saints, as we'll get to this later, so the church is very special. We should feel very special. The Old Testament saints are very special. The tribulation saints are very special too. You know, they are, and they are mentioned in Revelation, even though they come to Christ late, in very glowing terms because of what they suffer, you know. All right, so the fourth kingdom is different from all the other kingdoms. It begins as a united stage, and ultimately it's going to devour the whole earth. There will be, at some point, a one world government. And out of that, 10 kingdoms and 10 kings are going to arise. Another king's going to rise. I think it's one of the 10, but maybe not. And it's going to put down the other 3. So, and with that control is going to basically be able to control all 10.
Well, at that point, it would just be 7. Put down 3.
Yeah, but essentially he'll be ruling. And this king, the Antichrist, we already saw, he speaks words against the Most High, wears out the saints. Then he says a very interesting thing. He tries to change the laws and the times. So it doesn't give us a lot of specifics on this. Suggestions are that there are religious rules that are developed or changed. He develops his own feasts, modes of worship, articles of faith, appoints his own leaders, and rules during that 3.5-year period. And that's based on some other passages which I'm not bringing up today, but this is some work that Frutenbaum did. And people think that there's almost a new religious system. It's not religious. It's basically,
Well, even humanism.
we're our own God.
Humanism is the religion.
Yeah, human.
Well, it makes sense because Satan's essentially trying to copy.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah, he's repeating everything God does. So judgment, of course, ultimately ends this fourth empire. That's the purpose of tribulation. It is consumed at the end. The end is the second coming of Christ. And so we get up this new kingdom. Now, couple things I want to, and of course this kingdom is given to the saints and we're going to rule with Christ. We talked about that. So let's go back to this fourth kingdom, which I've told you, it's not Rome, it's imperialism. And that's why it's different. Starts out as Rome, but remember I told you control is achieved through either actual in-place leaders or other forms of coercion. It doesn't mean armed control, although usually there's a military in some ways behind it. Okay, so what are the stages? So the first stage is the United Stage. That was Rome. The second stage is what? We talked about this.
Yeah, you're talking about the fourth kingdom.
Of the fourth beast, yeah, the fourth kingdom, the different. What's the second stage?
Well, that's a split because the feet were different.
It splits.
Were different, and then
So it splits, right. It's a 2-division stage. It starts in 364 AD when the Roman Empire divides along an east-west axis. So the eastern part remains in Constantinople, which is until it's conquered by the Turkish invasion. Those rulers call themselves Tsars, which is Russian for Caesar. Eventually, Russia gives itself the title of the Third Roman Empire. And with the breakup of the Soviet Union, the power has been shifting. Okay, actually, in my view, it seems to be shifting back to the Middle East now, with almost kind of an Arab control of that eastern side. Now, the Western division remains in Rome until 476, and then it shifts to France. No, France first with Charlemagne, calling itself the Holy Roman Empire of the Frankish nation. Otto I defeats the Franks and sets up the Holy Roman Empire for the German nation. They called themselves Kaisers, which is German for Caesar. And that was German. So after World War I, the power's been shifting among the Western nations. And obviously, it's shifted to Washington, D.C. for many years. After World War II, as we rose up and the Cold War happened, and that's when it was kind of the U.S. and Russia were the two East-West splits. With the breakup of the Soviet Union, and you have periods of time where it's, is it shifting to China? Is it shifting to the Arabs with this, Muslim-Islam conflict? I don't know. But right now, the East part is shifting. Not sure where it's shifting to, if it's going to end up, and maybe part of the reason it's shifting is because we're getting to the part where, the brittle part where it's going to break up into the 10 kingdoms. But the history's been clear. It's been a two-division shift, two-division situation for a long time. It's just shifting among places that are the head of it. So ultimately, everything's going to break down. I told you my theory on that. I think we will have a nuclear exchange. And just like at the end of World War I, just like at the end of World War II, all the world governments will come together and they'll create something that won't work. League of Nations, United Nations.
Saudi Arabia right now, things are getting very
They are. And so where is these nukes going to launch from? Will Iran launch against Israel? We'll talk about that because that's one of the events that have to lead before the tribulation. And does Iron Dome shoot down most of it, but then we end up creating them? You'll see next week when we talk about one of the events that's talked about pretty specifically, and that sounds like it. Another possibility, of course, is the U.S. Korea, or that area, because if there's nukes launched, China's not going to be happy because they're going to get fallout. Japan's not going to be happy, if Okinawa or something is hippie. Well, nobody's going to be. That's true.
Other than President Trump, nobody's going to be happy.
But here's the thing. When I say not happy, this is what happened after World War II. People are going to demand something is done. And and so one possibility is the whole world says to one person, you're in charge, we're going to give you in charge, and he draws up a 10-region group and says, within your region, you have absolute authority to make sure no one but sane people have nukes, okay?
But some people want to vote for a president of the United States. Some other countries feel like they should be able to vote because we're so powerful and what we do affects the whole world. And so some people are already talking about that.
So,
that one world government.
and by the way, this will, go ahead.
What I was going to say was, we're sitting here, we're talking about what people are doing and people are doing.
Right, what God's.
But don't forget what God's doing. You just
Yes.
mentioned the breakup of the Soviet Union. That was huge.
Yes, it
That
was.
a big thing. Do you know what precipitated a lot of that? The sending of Bibles legally into that world because they had a propaganda agreement with India. And they were sending propaganda to India, and India was sending nothing. And a little missionary guy found out, and he got his friends, and they sent, and the people in America stuffed Bibles into envelopes and put postage stamps and hand addressed them and mailed them in, and they got them. And they got them, and we know that began the breakup of the Soviet Union as those people turned their hearts to God. So we're all excited about politics. Forget the politics.
Well,
look at the Lord.
Yes, God is in charge, but also God doesn't force people. People act in their own sinful manner.
And so we need to keep spreading the gospel.
Exactly.
And that's the application.
Yeah.
God uses us, but He wants us to take this step.
Yes, exactly.
And Tom, there's something else too that's going on now, and this is biblical, I believe, and that's a financial crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, this financial it's
that
hard.
could actually, that
That could be a trigger.
Yes.
Well, it could be a combination of things, and who also knows ultimately how the three kings are going to come down, and there's just a lot of issues we don't know. God obviously knows. He hasn't told us exact, and that's intentional. We need to trust Him. Next week we'll talk about the rapture, which is very encouraging, because where it gets really bad, we do not have to go through the punishment. It's a judgment against the world. The tribulation is a judgment against the whole world. The last 3.5 years is a judgment against Israel, but it's the whole world. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so a really good application from what Myra said would be that when we see things falling apart, maybe we should think it's an open door. What can we do with this falling apart thing? What can we do as believers to that? Okay, it's chaos, the economic chaos. Okay, what can we do with that?
But what we should, one thing that we should do, and that's, we see all this happening, but we know how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So for us,
We should hope
we
and pass it
are
on.
waiting for this to happen.
Right.
Mhm.
You
And we of all people should have
We
hope.
shouldn't be afraid.
Yeah, pray. We need to pray for the persecuted, for the world. We need to be, my application is we can disagree on how much life is manipulated by God, but God controls the times and seasons of rulers. And everyone is, actually, as David's been preaching about authority, rulers are set up by God, and He knows how it's all going to fit together. But we need to be praying. And we need to be good witnesses, too, because even if someone doesn't come to the Lord, you could be saving them in the future. And also, I wouldn't hold back from talking to people about the rapture. And, I had one friend at USAA, and if I'm gone and no one can find me, one possibility is the rapture. I just want you to think about that. What?
You could joke with
Well, that was at RAND. There were people that, a few people I talked to at RAND, and there was one guy especially, every time he'd see me, he was Baha'i Faith, Larry, he was a PhD, he would say, "Oh, I guess the rapture hasn't happened yet." I said, "That's right."
Someday it will, and then he'll go like, whoa.
That's exactly right. And so don't be, afraid to talk about the rapture, because that could be a very, important point for someone. So, all right.
Go ahead.
Speaking of that, it just interesting in Scripture. It says, when it happens, people we know. People knows that are left behind. They know exactly what happened.
Well, Satan.
Always a secret.
Satan is trying to set up that won't happen. And I don't know if you saw the latest thing that we expect to see aliens in 25 years. There was a report that came out. And, a lot of our television with the aliens and, people are going to come up with excuses. Actually, because they don't want to believe.
Yeah, that's true.
And Satan is setting that up. I mean, he's smart. He's schemed all kinds of angles so that people don't come to the truth. So let's pray and close. I think we did get as far as I thought we were going to, but that's okay.